public comment. This time, any member of the public may address the Airport Commission on a subject within its jurisdiction on an item that is not scheduled before them on this day. Total time for public comment, 15 minutes. Do we have any speaker slips?
No speaker slips. We have an audience, but no speaker slips.
Yeah. All right. Lively audience. Okay. Thank you. Notices that the lease review subcommittee meeting scheduled for Thursday, December 2nd was canceled, and that on Thursday, December 9th at 5 p.m. the Airport Commission Secretary duly posted this agenda on the bulletin board at Airport Administration. And that brings us to the consent calendar, approval of minutes, and several leases. Any changes, withdrawals from the consent calendar? A motion to pass the consent calendar as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The consent calendar is approved as presented. That brings us to our liaison reports, and I guess Council Member Easton will introduce our new liaison.
So much for having surprises for you.
Oh, sorry.
Well,
It's a small
Karen, he called Karen Ransdell, you know, when I told him this afternoon that he was on the cusp. But I would like to introduce to you someone who's been of immeasurable help to me in my first 2 years as a council member, a former mayor of the city of Goleta, hence the Honorable Roger Aceves, who will take my role as liaison. Whether or not he can manage to provide the entertainment that I have provided to you, he's in some doubt about, but then I understand that. And so it's up to him to do his own thing with you, and I hope he will. I think he'll do it very capably, and I would like to pass over to him and ask him to join me here and take the symbolic agenda. I have a few other things to pass on to him from this history, except a lot of good times and a lot of education as to what you do here, how you do it, and how well it's done. Impressive. Thank you very much.
I think on behalf
Our
of
opening words.
all of us, we'd
I
certainly like
don't have a joke for you. I didn't know that was part of the responsibilities of being a liaison. So I'll have to think of something for next time. I'm looking forward to being a liaison to the commission. It was about 2 or 3 years ago when you and I first met, Mr. Ramsdale, about the possibility of having our city have a liaison. So we got it done, and it's kind of interesting now to come back to me to be able to come back and be the liaison. So I hope to be able to present to you at your meetings brief updates of what's happening in our city, and also know that I'm available at any time should you have any questions about things of mutual interest. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, and we'd certainly like to thank Councilmember Easton for all his commitment and good humor in joining us. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, may I make a little presentation?
Oh, absolutely.
Councilmember Easton, you could come over here. This is a card just of expressing our thanks for your graciousness, your wit, and your dedication in coming to all the meetings. Sometimes you were our only member of the audience, but you were well behaved.
When you're new to council, you were very careful.
But it's been a very good start to a relationship between the City of Goleta and the City of Santa Barbara and Airport Commission. And I know I speak on behalf of the Commission as well as staff. And the Santa Barbara Historical Museum commissioned this historic book of Santa Barbara, of which the airport was a sponsor of the book, and so we have a piece of our history in it, and we'd like to present this to you. And, you know, I don't know if you want to put something over the word Santa Barbara when it's on your desk, or...
As your sign in the airport says, it's Santa Barbara Goleta.
That's right.
We're
That's
all
what I
together
think.
in this.
That's what I think. And thank you so much.
Very much. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate this, and keep it.
you. And oh, he snuck in. I guess I didn't recognize that Commissioner Colbert did sneak in after the roll call. And in addition, I think probably back in the notices, I should have also made note to welcome back Patricia Griffin and Commissioner Kirk Martin, who, along with myself, the City Council, have renewed our appointment for the next term, and we're very thankful to them for that. Welcome both back.
Thank you.
All right. And that brings us to the administrative reports.
Okay. Several meetings ago, Commission had requested a presentation from the Transportation Security Administration about kind of the status of security in not only our country but at our airport. And this evening, the Federal Security Director for our area, Jeff Spock, from the Transportation Security Administration, is here to make a presentation, and I'm sure he can answer all your questions. You can do that, or if you want to come here so you can control the laptop.
Well, good evening, everybody. As Karen said, my name is Jeff Spock. I'm the Federal Security Director here for Santa Barbara. We also have spoke airports to the north, Santa Maria, as well as San Luis Obispo. We have Oxnard Airport to the south. However, if you're not familiar with Oxnard Airport, they did defederalize here this past August. SkyWest did pull out in June. They were feverishly trying to get another carrier down there, and unfortunately they were not successful. So right now we're just focusing on Santa Barbara and Santa Maria and San Luis Obispo. A little bit about myself. I've been with TSA since April of 2002. I started at LAX as an aviation security inspector. Then in September of 2002, I actually came here to Santa Barbara and rolled out Santa Barbara Airport with TSA. Randy McIntosh, the former Federal Security Director, was my supervisor. I started out as a stakeholder liaison. In February of 2003, I was promoted to the Assistant Federal Security Director for screening, in charge of all screening operations. In July of 2004, I was promoted to Palm Springs International Airport. I packed my family up and we moved to the desert, which was quite a different place to live. We became a desert rat. Didn't miss the LA traffic, but it did miss the ocean and the coast. And then this past February Super Bowl weekend, I did move back here and accepted a position as the Federal Security Director. So it's nice to be back here in Santa Barbara, and just enjoying them the 8 months we've been here so far. Presentation is a little vanilla, I call it, because of TSA. A lot of stuff that we do is deemed SSI, which is sensitive security information. So I will give you what I can. I will do my best to answer questions, like Karen said, but some of them I may have to just kind of defer you maybe to send me an email later, and I will do my best to get you something that maybe will meet your needs, but I will do my best. So we'll just start with the presentation here. Just the button. There we go. Okay. So nothing new here. TSA was created shortly after 9/11 when the President signed the ATSA, which created TSA. 2003, TSA went from the Department of Transportation to the Department of Homeland Security, making up a quarter of its workforce. We're about 50,000 plus strong, so quite a massive workforce. We have a very diverse group. We have a lot of our employees here with TSA who felt just a calling after 9/11. We have attorneys, we have doctors, and so just a really incredible bunch of officers who are working for us here in Santa Barbara. Strategic approach. This has changed over the years depending on who our administrator is. As you guys know, our new administrator, Mr. John Pistol, is former FBI. So a lot of our strategy these days is based on intelligence, which is really the right way to go. It kind of takes us from being on the defensive to be on the offensive is the way I like to look at it. We have numerous layers of security as opposed to 2002, where we're really just kind of focusing on a security checkpoint and maybe check baggage. And now, as you'll see in a future slide, we're really looking at the entire footprint of an airport as far from a security and a risk-based analysis. Obviously, cutting-edge technology. I'm briefly going to talk about some of the new technologies out there. Obviously, Thanksgiving weekend, it was a media frenzy, and I'm sure a lot of you heard Mr. Pistol speak on air to a lot of the media outlets and stuff, and it was a very controversial weekend. but as you'll see, it was really kind of an uneventful Thanksgiving for TSA across the country, which is the way we kind of like it. So this is just kind of a neat slide, kind of shows you, it shows 20 layers of security. I don't have my glass, that's such small print, I apologize. But you've got hardened cockpit doors, you've got Federal Air Marshals, you've got K-9, you've got behavior detection officers, you've got AIT technology, you've got FFDOs, which stands for Federal Flight Deck Officers, you have trained crew members, Federal Air Marshals, advanced technology X-ray at the security checkpoints. So just numerous layers of security, which we did not have back in 2002. So we really evolved into a layered philosophy with TSA under Homeland. The other one in there I want to just mention is VIPER. VIPER stands for Visible Intermodal Protection and Response. It really what it is, it's just going into a mode of transportation and really saturating that mode or that event with law enforcement, with TSA, possibly CBP and our ICE partners, with our inspectors, and just quickly changing the security posture of that transportation system. It could be surface, it could be a train, it could be a metro, could be airports, it could be our ports. So we're doing a lot of VIPERs, which you probably will not hear about more than likely, because that's the way we're trying to be kind of stealth when we do VIPERs. As I mentioned, the airport security and the footprint for TSA has really kind of evolved over the past few years. We're not just focused on the checkpoint these days. We're really interested in, actually even before a passenger even gets to the airport. As you guys know, TSA has taken over secure flight, which is the watch list, as well as the no-fly and the selectee list. So our goal actually is really to try to deter and disrupt these folks before they even get to the airport. Obviously, with 2.5 million passengers traveling a day through our nation's airports, it is truly a very difficult job that our officers and our agency has in front of us. We're about ready to come up with our 1-year anniversary from the underwear bomber. And again, I think had the AIT technology and some of these enhanced pat-downs come out possibly in the first quarter of this year, as opposed to Thanksgiving week, I think that it would have been well received by the general population. But I think just the timing was very, very difficult for us as an agency. Here's just a footprint of a checkpoint where you'll see some of the advanced technology, X-rays that are being deployed out there. Obviously, the advanced image technology, the AIT, which is the controversial technology out there for privacy concerns. Explosive trace detections continue to be just a great piece of equipment for us. And travel document checking has kind of evolved over here in the past few years too. Now there's a lot of fraudulent passports and IDs out there, and so we've trained our officers and we've worked with our local law enforcement partners to really get our officers up to speed on recognizing false and fraudulent and tampered IDs. It's a great layer of security. Screening technologies, as I mentioned, the AIT is probably the most controversial, as well as the one that's getting the most attention right now. I can share with you that with our new terminal next year, we will be getting AIT. Unfortunately, I can't tell you too much more as far as numbers and which technology we're getting right now, because that is considered sensitive security information. We hope to do a pretty robust media campaign when we do get about ready to roll out the new terminal with TSA, and hopefully we'll have some opportunities to get up close and personal with the new technology. And this is pretty much open source stuff. I mean, I was going to print some stuff off for you commission members and bring it to you, but I just saved some trees and thought that you could probably just do a Google search on this stuff, or you could probably go to www.tsa.gov, click on Travelers section. You can probably pull up the stuff here. It's open source, and again, it's probably a repeat of what we saw blasted across the airwaves leading up to Thanksgiving. We are looking forward to hopefully next year to what's called ATR. It's called Automated Target Resolution. It does eradicate the privacy concerns. It's the stick figure technology, and it's the cartoon outline, so it doesn't have the outline of the actual passenger. And what that will do is we will no longer have to have a security officer who does not have, that person now would be able to have line of sight view of the passenger. In today's AIT world, the screening officer needs to be in a different room and with not a line of sight of the passenger for privacy issues. And I think it's just worth mentioning. You hear a lot of misnomers out there that these images are stored, they're saved, they're printed, they're passed on. They're not. Obviously, we don't have it here in Santa Barbara, but I have witnessed this stuff, and they're not saved. There's no cell phone cameras or cell phones allowed in these viewing rooms for our security officers. We monitor very closely, and they know what's at stake. Federal Air Marshals, I'm not going to go too much. It's kind of a different branch. We do work closely with our Federal Air Marshals. You probably won't know they're traversing Santa Barbara Airport. Again, they're pretty covert, unless we're doing a Viper. Secure Flight, this is a new component for TSA. It used to be manned by the air carriers, and it just, one of the 9/11 recommendations was that TSA take over the watch list, and so that's what you have, Secure Flight now. So everything's kind of a one-stop shopping for us, and it makes our jobs a lot easier here in looking for people who maybe need some additional scrutiny at the airports. So that's a great feature now that with Secure Flight and TSA owning that component. Vetting and credentialing rests with TSA, airline pilots, flight crews, airport airline employees, hazmat, and port workers. Again, just running those backgrounds, making sure that these folks are deserving of a badge that will allow them to work in a sensitive area. Surface transportation. I was just having a chat with a gentleman before the commission meeting. You know, people see surface and they don't think of TSA. For the first few years, we really focused on aviation security because that's what was a very soft target. But now we're starting to venture out into other modes of transportation, surface and rail. Actually, TSA is the lead agency on all modes of transportation except for the ports, where Coast Guard has the lead. So we do work with our other federal partners in other modes of transportation. But TSA does do Vipers and does do inspections on freight, passenger, rail, and highways. If you were to go out to New York right now, and you'll see a lot of TSA working with the NYPD. And we're starting negotiations, I hear, up in the Bay Area with TSA working with the BART system. So it's really a partnership and a lot of coordination and collaboration to do the other modes of transportation.
Do you do pipeline?
We also do pipeline as well. Yeah. Right now with things like pipeline, there's not a lot of regulation and for TSA to go out there and enforce anything. So it's kind of a grassroots going out there and just shaking hands and putting a face with TSA and establishing that, you know, if you see something, report it. You know, if something doesn't pass the smell test, we want to know about it. The TWIC is basically what we're using in the ports. You can almost compare it to a SITA badge in the airport. It's just kind of keeping tabs on making sure people who are in and around the ports have an operational need to be down there. That's the TWIC card. That's really it. These are just a couple public domain websites that we kind of encourage people to go to. You know, we try to educate our passengers. A lot of times it seems like there's a real kind of combative relationship between TSA and our passengers, and we're really working hard to try to change that because, again, with 2 million passengers traveling in a day, if we can get those passengers on our side looking for those anomalies and those suspicious characters or someone showing signs of deception, stress, or fear, or just, we want to know about that. We want to look into it because we've got to get it right every single time. And our officers take a lot of pride in what they do, and we support them to the fullest. So our job is not only, you know, catching the prohibited items and the IEDs, but also educating passengers so we can lower the hassle factor for them when they're traveling and traversing through our nation's airports. We just kind of feel like that's our job as well. Again, I know it's a pretty vanilla briefing, but again, a lot of the stuff is just considered sensitive security information that I would love to tell you. It's just, unless it's a need to know, I just unfortunately cannot share with you. But I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have regarding TSA.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Could you say again what VIPER stands for?
Yeah, it's Visible Intermodal Protection and Response. You're welcome.
Well, I know I think it was just before our last meeting in November was about when the press got a hold of the idea that airports could contract or is made out to be that an airport could go out and contract for private security, and I think it pretty much I think it was made fairly clear that wasn't exactly what I think some of the press might have had that seem to be, but perhaps you could just speak briefly on.
What I can share with you is there's what's called the Screening Partnership Program at our TSA headquarters. And so when TSA originally rolled out, they did do a pilot at 5 airports at all categories, Category X, Cat 1, 2, 3, and 4 airports. So I don't know all 5 of them offhand. I know San Francisco was one. I think Jackson Hole was another one. And so they just want to do an analysis. Was the screening better? Was the performance better? And so really, I don't think that any of the studies and analysis have come out have really shown that the contract screeners do it any better than TSA, because it's TSA oversight is the bottom line. So it may be a contract workforce, but it's the TSA standard operating procedures, it's TSA management, it's TSA philosophy, and everything's TSA minus that contractor's name on those screening officers. I believe Montana is one state that's also has some private screening airports.
Mr. Chair, I spoke with the director of the San Francisco airport, and they have, as Jeff said, the contract screeners. And he said, at first they responded very customer friendly because they knew their contract was at stake. But now, he said it kind of is eroded over time, and the customer service isn't quite as good as it was in the beginning. So I think you're basically dealing with people, and regardless of who their employer is. But I think one of the mistakes or the misconceptions that was put forth by the media was that somehow if airports could contract directly and they wouldn't somehow be following TSA rules or using their equipment or anything, and that's clearly not the case.
Can you go over again in the beginning? You're part of DHS. Are you? Where do you fall with FAA and DOT? Is it a separate branch completely?
When TSA first was created, we were under the Department of Transportation, and we took over a lot of the FAA responsibilities, and we kind of ran like an FAA. In 2003, we left Department of Transportation and fell under Department of Homeland Security.
Okay, so there's a lot of vetting going on in the other agencies, kind of overlapping with yours, and you work in conjunction with DOT and
That's correct.
with the
That's correct.
transportation.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct.
Another question I had, because during the holiday there was a lot of discussion about people who would be opting out, and how did you deal with that?
Well, we were prepared here locally. We actually, Karen and I worked very closely and were prepared. We had a game plan with our law enforcement partners, and
if I could, I'm sorry, opting out of the
out of just screening.
Out of screening.
Yeah, we were just, if we had any, what we were prepared for was we called civil disobedience, where someone who was just going to maybe come to the airport, made a reservation, but had no intention to fly. We were ready. We were going, we told our officers to be prepared for this opt-out campaign, this opt-out website, the so-called, but never really materialized here in Santa Barbara. We did hear of some events at other larger airports, Boston, Logan, a few at LAX. But my understanding was that they opted out of the AIT technology and then went through the Walther metal detectors, submitted to a pat-down, and cleared with no events, nothing significant to report. So I think the opt-out campaign never really kind of materialized, which is good. In order to do that, they would have had to purchase a ticket and be in the system. That's correct. It wasn't like they could just go through screening without a ticket. So they'd have to buy into this. In order to get to the security check, when they have to pass through our travel document checking, which is presenting a valid ID and a boarding pass for that particular flight. Right. Yeah. It was good that nothing happened. Yeah, me too.
The cartoon figure technology, is that the same that they're using in Amsterdam?
I'm not familiar with Amsterdam's security technology. I just know that ATR is badly needed, I think. I think it's going to be a great technology, a great enhancement to the way we're doing business today with the AIT. I think it's, again, I think there's some privacy concerns out there for some passengers. Again, I think the media makes it look a lot larger than it really is. If it bleeds, it reads, is what we kind of tell our officers sometimes. But I think there's a lot of the population understands that this is a technology that we need. It puts us in the best position to, detect those non-explosive or non-metallic explosive components, such as the underwear bomber.
And the ATR is using a different technology, not radiation, is that correct?
It's the same technology, it's a software update or an enhancement to the existing AIT equipment, And again, it would just allow the officer to not have to be in a separate viewing station, and it's not, it doesn't show the whole outline of the passengers.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I thought you were going to ask if the cartoon technology was the same as used at Disneyland.
No.
I would have expected that.
Mr. Chair, why on earth would you suspect?
You mentioned that there's no recording equipment allowed in that viewing booth. I know one of the issues that came up was the possibility for abuse. Are there measures in place that monitor the officer?
Almost like if you'd have a passenger who was submitting to screening would divest all their accessible property, all the metal in their pockets, we need to ensure that our officers go into that viewing station that they've divested to make sure that they don't have any cell phones or any type of recording devices. So it is closely monitored, and they understand what's at stake.
I guess on a similar vein, I'd just be interested in knowing what sort of recurring background checks and that type of thing do the officers themselves go through?
That's a good question. I would have to research that and get back to you. You talk about vetting and credentialing for our own folks.
Right.
Yeah, we have a whole personal security division that does our backgrounds and stuff for new hires as well as repeats. So as far as how much and how long, I'd have to get back to you.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you very much for
Thank you for
joining
the
us
opportunity. I
and sharing
appreciate
this
it.
information with us.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay. That brings us to the director's report.
Okay, your favorite part of the agenda. Our passenger count for November was up 1.1% compared with November of 2009, which I'm very pleased about. The total passengers for the year for 2010 was up 1% compared to 2009. So I think we're heading in a good direction, slow, but I like the trend. I did receive, often we compare with John Wayne Airport because we receive their press releases on their passenger count, and they've had a full year of decrease in passenger counts. So I feel we're doing good for us. Air service and loss of some air service that we've had this last year has been a community concern, and we have our marketing staff and our air service consultant making a visit with Alaska Horizon Air in January at their headquarters in Seattle to discuss service. And so it's just another example of what we do to continually try and retain, bring back, and keep our air service. Again, I won't go through every item in the director's report, but I would like to point out on the Airline Terminal Public Arts Program, I think last month we had just had the pre-proposal meeting with the artists for the Pierre Clyson's museum-sponsored art, and we're getting calls from artists for information and that sort of thing. So it appears that a number of them are putting together proposals, which is good. I'd also like to direct you to our website, flysva.com. Our city TV has put up a new video on the public art program for the terminal. As you know, during the terminal construction, they have been photographing and videoing the progress that's been made, and this segment is on the public art program, and I think they did a really fantastic job as usual. They show mosaic artist Lorianne David, who is making the floor medallion in her studio working on the medallion, and they interview her. Also, they interview the widow of Channing Peak, who's the mural we'll have in the terminal. So I think it's well worth watching. It's not very long, and it's very, very well done. The other item I wanted to bring up is the terminal project itself. If you've driven by, you can see that it's really coming along quite nicely. They're beginning to put the metal studs on the second floor, which they couldn't do until they had finished some of the roof and some of the other parts of the construction. And now the schedule looks about mid-May with the rain delays that we've had. So they're still making some very, very good progress. Smiling. And I think also our title circulation project, maybe in the spring when it's light out longer, we can get you out for a tour of the title circulation project. They're beginning to plant the bottom of the tidal basin, and so they should be done by the end of this month or beginning of January. So that's good to get that done, not only for our a restoration of the slough, but also it's a last piece of mitigation for our runway safety area project. And that was all I was going to highlight this month, unless you have other items you'd like me to speak to.
I'm sure we'll be looking forward to the slough tour. I did have, I was curious, several months ago, I had asked about the kind of ongoing saga of the ILS system, the instrument landing system, and its reliability, and I was wondering if there's been any update on that, if the FAA had taken any measures to try to help improve that situation.
Yes, and I will let Tracy speak to that. You knew that was coming. And I will say that we did go on a tour of all the FAA facilities that are on the airport, the glide slope, the localizer, all of it. And it was very, very interesting to see the work that they do and how they keep this place running. So, Tracy?
I did speak with the manager of the facilities division that maintains the equipment, and he assured me that it was not related to the move. The two, I believe, two breakdowns within the last few months were unexpected. They do have new antennas for the glide slope, which is the more difficult to repair and the more critical item. So they are very confident that we're not going to see continued problems. They also have invited me to come along with them on one of their kind of routine checks when they're doing the calibration of the localizer. We got a tour of radar, the localizer, the glide slope, one other facility. But they were very gracious in inviting us over. And I left with confidence that we're still, in good hands. They've got a good PM system in place. They do have one of their most seasoned technicians retiring in a few months. And they are doing their best to get other talent to replace them. Not accomplished yet, but they are working on that diligently, yes. So they are very confident that it is not related to the move and it's not going to be an ongoing issue.
Okay, yes, thank you for that.
I wanted to alleviate fear. I've had some public question and comment that the new terminal would be purple when it is completed, and I want to assure all those who are tuning in that it will not be.
Oh, darn. Yeah, I tried to tell when we took the Planning Commission, Historic Landmark Commission, and ABR on a tour, I tried to tell them that we had decided to change the color to purple, but they knew too much about construction, so.
Didn't buy it.
No.
Okay. Any other questions for the director? Okay. Well, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Now you get to
Second.
make a motion. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
See you next year.
Thank you very much. Happy holidays.